What's going on, everyone? We'll get started in just a minute for how to make 8-bit game music. It should be pretty fun. I'm going to make an announcement in the Discord and we'll go from there. Okay, y'all. I'm going to post the event link for everyone to go ahead and register yourselves. We're going to be starting in just a second. What's going on, everyone? My name is Zane. I'm a coach at MLH, and today we are going to be talking about how to make 8-bit game music. So I'm going to approach this from a few different angles. One is how music itself works naturally, pretty important to talk about when making music, as well as some of the technical aspects that go into 8-bit music specifically, like some of your limitations, some of the essential concepts to know about. How that relates to the electronics and how that also relates to the musicality of things. So just curious here, who in the chat has any experience with music as a whole, like making your own music or even 8-bit music or chiptune music? And just where does your interest lie with that sort of stuff? Love to hear about it. There we go. We got some 8-bit music fans. Musically challenged. I hear that, man. I did classical training for a number of years in music composition. It was rough first starting out. I did not have a musical bone in my body at the time, but with a lot of practice, you'd be surprised what you can accomplish. A little bit of experience. Awesome. Have any of you guys ever messed around with synthesizers or just musical electronics, anything in that sense? The recorder in elementary school. There we go. We all start somewhere. I did that too. Hot cross buns. It's a classic. Maybe we can recreate that tonight. You know, funnily enough, it's actually a melody that I tap into when people ask me about how to learn music. I usually tell them to learn how to recreate their favorite melodies or just even basic melodies from childhood. And if something's too difficult for them, I always tell them to start back at hot cross buns and just build up from there. Played with making audio from various waveforms. Yeah, perfect. So we're actually going to talk about many types of waveforms today. You're familiar with like sine waves, saw, square, pulse waves, all that fun stuff. So seems like we have some definite interest here in the chat. Good stuff. So, well, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Well, one final question. I mean, obviously, there's going to be the music and there's going to be the tech aspect of it. If you guys have any questions on anything, by all means, go ahead and drop them in the chat. Or if you find yourself being more interested in one area versus the other, like more the musicality side of things, how the music itself functions and works, versus the tech, how the tech itself functions and works, by all means, let me know like what exactly strikes your interest, and we can spend more time there. So with that being said, I'm going to share my entire desktop. So you're going to see some of the behind the scenes here of things from my perspective, but I'm going to be juggling a few different programs. That's why. So I should be able to share system audio too. Let's get this added. Okay, awesome. Okay. So where we start, I think we're going to start on the musicality side of things because we'll kind of dilly-dally between the two because they're both very related. How the music itself works and is very much influenced by like the hardware and just say what old video game consoles were working and limited by. So first things first, we're going to look at just kind of the basics of the game hardware. I actually have a music production program opened right now called Reaper. It's WinRAR free, as they say, but it's a pretty nice program. You guys have ever heard of music production software like Ableton and FL Studio, so on and so forth? It's essentially like that. It's a program that allows you to make music. So let me know too if you all can hear this. Let me see. Let me not bust our ears. Let's have us do this. Let me know if that's audible and if it's too quiet or too loud. Just want to make sure. Reaper itself is not open source, but there's another program that we'll be using shortly called MuseScore, which allows you to make sheet music, which is open source. In fact, there's a guy on YouTube, Tantacruel, who makes pretty like relatively viral videos. He's the lead, he's a programmer, and I think he's the lead product designer, or he has a very big role in MuseScore's development. There's actually kind of a famous story within that sort of community where MuseScore was a pretty decent program before he got involved, but once he joined, like things got pretty revolutionized to where MuseScore is all the more respected, even more than it once was. Okay, so I got maybe a bit loud and I got slightly lower volume than my voice. So we'll see. Just let me know in the chat. It's a little bit finicky with this sort of stuff. So I'll turn it down a tiny smidge, as long as it's like kind of, as long as it's intelligible. Just yell at me in the chat otherwise. Okay, so anyways, a lot of things going on the screen, but let's go ahead and get focused. So for your 8-bit music, pretty standard for old consoles, like I mainly know the NES and the original Game Boy. Very common to have, how those hardwares were laid out is you had 3 channels for pitch and 1 channel for noise and sound effects. And I'll kind of explain what I mean by that. So first thing first to know with music, especially this older music, is for this 8-bit music, is you're going to want to have melodies. You want to have a pitched sound source. So I was playing one here just a second ago. I can go through. This is what we call a musical voice, or like call it a musical voice, call it a melody. It's just like one entity of pitch, right? We can't play like 2 notes at once on this thing because it's kind of like your own human voice, right? You can't sing 2 notes at once. This one singular voice is limited to just 1 pitch at a time. Electronically, we would call this our oscillator. So oscillator is basically just our sound source, right? Just like how my voice is a source of sound that I can use to sing. I'm currently right now playing for you a single oscillator, a single sound source. So your old 8-bit hardware is going to have 3 pitched oscillators. So I just played one for you. There's another pitched oscillator that's very, very similar with basically the same functionalities. Sounds a little bit different because I have some controls different here, but it functions the exact same way. So these 2 oscillators that I just played for you back to back is what we call our pulse oscillators, or our the oscillator is a sound source, but the kind of the type of sound that it's making we call a pulse wave. It just has a particular sound to it. If you're familiar with electrical engineering concepts, or I guess signal concepts like pulse width modulation, so on and so forth, that's actually stuff that we can use in the music realm to change the sound of our particular voice, our particular sound source. So on my first oscillator now, again, I can play again and chase the pulse width. Takes a slightly different sound to my another change in the pulse width. So this sort of stuff is utilized in actual songs to give a richer sound palette. We'll kind of see later on what exactly that entails. But yeah, so we have 2 oscillators, which are pulse width, or just pulse waveforms. They're kind of locked into it on that old hardware. When you have an oscillator like on something with a bit more capability, like a standard musical synthesizer, a single oscillator which generates a sound source can utilize different waveforms. Your waveforms are like different sound qualities, different timbres we call them. But for this old video game stuff, our oscillator for our first oscillator is locked in as a pulse width, or as a pulse wave. Our second oscillator is locked in as a pulse wave as well. We have a third oscillator that's also pitched that kind of goes through different unique waveforms. So it's not pulse. It's kind of a set of, I think it's actually a set of different audio samples, but that are used as waveforms most often. So I'll kind of switch between them, and you can see. That's one sound. That's another. Right, so slightly different sounds. Oh, okay, just gonna check the chat here. There we go, look at those emojis. Beautiful. So, just good to know what we're working with. There's certain limitations that these are gonna have musically that we'll talk about. But kind of the biggest thing to know is that we have 3 oscillators that are pitched, right? We can make tunes with them, right? We can make melodies with them. Right? You could play it on a piano or guitar or the like. So we have 3 that are pitched, and we have one last sound source, our fourth and final one, which is I think it's commonly called as the noise channel, which is essentially just like white noise and related sounds. So you can see no matter what key I press on the keyboard, it's essentially just the same sound, right? Noise does not have a discernible pitch to it. You can actually change the unique sound of it. You can change the timbre, but it's nothing pitched for any of them. They're all sound effects. So what we'll come to see is that the noise is actually going to be used most often for percussion of all things. You'll also have it be used for sound effects, but a lot of times it's for percussion. So I record a little drum track made with the noise, going through these different timbres that we heard, just to give an idea of how it could actually perform as drums. Right, so you have your basic drum pattern there. We call that a little bit later on. That sort of pattern we call a boots and cats. If you're into like dance music or disco, pop, anything of that nature, a boots and cats pattern, it kind of gets its name from just saying boots and cats and boots and cats and boots and cats. If you kind of shorten things, you hear that at the club all the time. That's what's going on here. We have the noise. We have the noise in such a way that it's mimicking that sort of drum pattern. Right, here's that boots and cats and boots and cats. So we can use that for percussion. So all in all, we have 3 pitch sources, and we have a drum set in terms of our most basic musicality here. So now kind of goes on the natural question is, well, what do we do with these guys? Like, how do we make full-fledged music? Remember, these guys are all monophonic, these oscillators here. You only have 3 pitch sound sources. So like, how do you make a full rich sounding song with only 3 sound sources? Like, even if you play a chord on the piano, that's 3 notes right there, at least. A lot of people, you know, a lot of people don't even learn nowadays how to write songs with only 3 basic melodies or 3 basic sound sources. So it's kind of I wouldn't say a lost art, but it's just not really explored very much in music as a whole anymore. But if you really, really know what you're doing, you can uncover a lot of crazy possibilities. So we're actually going to get into that right now. So we're eventually going to relate everything back to Reaper, and we're going to load up melodies, program melodies, so on and so forth. But I like using a music notation program to kind of show how the music comes together. If you don't have any experience or any know-how with musical notation, I promise you this is not going to be crazy to follow along. It's actually pretty straightforward. A lot of the people that I teach composition to, they don't even have musical backgrounds, but we can get them started on this stuff in just a couple minutes. So it's not too crazy. Okay, so what I'm going to do here in my software is I've created, this is MuseScore, by the way. I think I mentioned it before, but MuseScore is an open source music notation software. It's gotten more powerful through different versions where you can even make fairly convincing like demos and sketches of songs. But I like using it to just kind of figure out the musical logic to things. You'll see what I mean. So we're going to rename these guys. We have pulse 1, right? We're going to have these reflect our oscillators here. Oops. We have pulse 1. We're going to have pulse 2. We're going to have our wave. So this is that 3rd pitched oscillator. At least I'm most familiar with like the original Game Boy in terms of its kind of sound architecture and the like. But then we'll have noise. So I'm going to have the score reflect all of these. And so we have these together. Okay, so now the time comes for making the music itself. So how do we actually make a decent sounding song with only 3 melodies? Well, you can do it with just 1 melody. You can do it with just 2 melodies. Funnily enough, you know, this is the question that a lot of those original composers for early video game music asked themselves. I'm sure you guys all know Pokemon. There was Junichi Masuda. He went on to take a really big role at as part of the Pokemon franchise and the like. But early on, he did, I mean, he was pretty involved in the early games, but he also did music. He was the sole composer for Pokemon Red and Blue, the first Pokemon games on the original Game Boy. And he was faced with this question too. Like, you have 3 pitched sound sources. How can you make rich music? How can you possibly put together a whole sonic world with this set of limitations? What he did is that he went back and studied a bunch of classical music, most notably Johann Sebastian Bach's 3-voice pieces. You can actually do some pretty insane stuff with even just 1 melody, but with 2 melodies and especially 3 melodies. This is stuff that classical composers worked out a really, really long time ago. Like, if you look up Bach's 2-part inventions, it only ever has 2 notes playing at once at the same time, but he makes crazy, crazy, absolutely insane musical textures and worlds that are like just absolutely mind-boggling. So that's a good recommendation, especially if you want to get into 8-bit music and the like. If you like classical, I recommend looking at that like 2-part inventions by older composers, especially like the classical guys. They really push that. They really push those sorts of limitations. They really push that sort of setup to its absolute maximum. It's actually pretty insane. So anyways, So this is definitely not a new thing. It's been around for hundreds of years. The classical guys used it. The early video game composers used it. And people nowadays making this sort of music use these sort of principles to follow with making full-fledged rich music with a limited amount of pitched voices. So there's lots of musical concepts that we could cover, but I don't want to get too bogged down in the musicality of things unless like people explicitly want me to. But kind of what it comes down to, the best way that I would say to approach it is, let's see. Boom, boom. Actually, let me do this. Sorry, just boom, boom. Okay, so boom, boom, bada boom, ba. Okay, we'll go in the key of G major. Sorry, just music stuff. Okay, so what we can do, there's a few different ways that you can start this with, like how to get your melodies and the like. A pretty good way that I'll show you guys, just because I think it's kind of nice, is we'll kind of start with basic chords. Ba 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 ba, boo doo doo boo boo, boo boo. Okay, so how's that? Is that too quiet? Also, I know musical can be a little bit quiet. It's hard to gauge like the audio level on this stuff at times too. Okay, I boost that up a little bit. Let me know if that's too crazy or not. But, putting together basic chords. Okay, it's good now that I've boosted it. I see people in the chat are responding. Okay, so here we have this. Ba, 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 ba. Okay, so this is, if you are familiar with classical, if you've ever taken a music theory class in high school or in college, this is just basic voice leading, right? The way that this works is people will play this and they'll go, okay, we have a chord. We have chords here. But the thing about chords, what a lot of people don't actually explicitly lay out is that these are actually all just individual melodies. Ba, 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 ba. So that's just one individual melody that our brain hears. Ba, 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 ba. Ba, 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 ba. Ba, 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 ba. I'm probably not going to sing that last one in the shower or like in the car. Ba, 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 ba. Not incredibly catchy or anything of the sort, but these are basic melodies. So the reason why this is important, well, a very important thing that we can, or how do I want to say this? A very powerful thing that we can do with this is we can use this as a basis to make more tuneful melodies. So you may just hear this and go, okay, chords. But you're going to see in a second that this is just a more fundamental structure. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to go, let me think. Ba, da, ba, da, da, ba, da, da, da. So we can go ba, 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 da, ba, da, da. We can do something like that. So 1, 2, 3, and So let's do that. Ba, do. So we can have this happen. Ba, ba, da, da, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so I just made some changes here. But what's happening is that we still have, remember that we just have, let me do this. So we have this foundation here. We have this ba, ba, ba. You're going to see we still have that. It's going to be ba, 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 but it's ornamented. The fundamental basis is still there, but you're gonna hear in a second what this comes out to being. It's a lot more decorated. So I'm gonna put this off to the side actually. Oops. Let me do this. I'm gonna change things around a little bit. So you're gonna see how this evolves. So on the right-hand side here, this is gonna be what we started with, and then we're gonna see how it evolves on the left-hand side. So again, we still have this foundation here, ba, 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 but now it's gonna be a lot more tuneful. And I'll finish this melody. So ba da 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 da. So we have ba da 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 da. We can go ba da 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 ba da da. So we'll go ba da da ba 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 da ba. So in full we have. Okay, so again, we still have that ba 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 ba, but it's just more ornamented. Ba da 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 da. We're gonna do that for all of our basic melodies here. They're just gonna become more and more ornamented. So this is the way that these guys approach composition. Oh, we got a lot of activity in the chat. Let me see. So cool to learn. I took 8-bit music for granted. Yeah, honestly. And this is coming pretty fluidly. Like I'm kind of making it look pretty easy. But, you know, to get a real fluency in this, it takes a lot of practice. There's a lot of thought that goes into it as well as you go on to learn this stuff. Like I said, I'm actually trained in composition. So it, I don't know, just some of the stuff that these guys came up with, especially these early video game composers, it kind of blows your mind when you really sit down with it and pick it apart. Like Junichi Masuda, like the guy who wrote the Pokemon music, his music is kind of like, how do I say? His music is a little bit messy at times. You can tell he's not like a super trained composer, but the stuff that he did make is actually kind of wild. There's some moments in his stuff that actually blow my mind, especially like the gym leader battle theme from Pokemon Red and Blue. Actually insane. Okay, thank you for teaching this. I have a great interest in music, reading it. Yeah, honestly, I'm happy to hear that. Yeah, a lot of people don't cover this stuff at all either. Like all the music theory guys on YouTube and resources and tutorials, they don't really break things down like this, which is really a shame. But it's so crucial just for writing music in general. Because if you can't write a good song with just 2 melodies, then you have a lot of fundamental holes in your ability. And when you add like a full guitar and bass and piano and all that, it just makes things. You're just adding. It's like putting makeup on a pig, essentially. Best way of saying it. So what tool am I using to make the music? So the one that I'm using right now is MuseScore. It's an open source, just music notation program. I'm going to jump over into Reaper in a little bit, where we're actually going to put electronic sounds to it that emulate the old 8-bit music. The old 8-bit video game hardware. But here I put on a metronome too. That way you can more clearly hear how this stuff is working rhythmically. It's just going to have a click underneath it. Okay, so again, we have this fundamental melody that we ornamented. So obviously, like I say, this is the foundation of it. But obviously, it's the ornamentation that catches your ear more often, that catches your ear a lot more vividly. You do need that frame and skeleton, but the interest doesn't come from the frame and skeleton necessarily. You need the ornamentation to make things really lively. So both are important, though. Okay, so let's start with the wave melody that we'll use. So we'll go ba 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 ba. So that's how it goes. Ba 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 ba. So let's kind of experiment a little bit, like ba da da ba 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 ba, something like that. Ba da ba 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 ba. Okay, I think that'll work. Boo doo doo. Boo doo doo boo. Let's try that out. Boo doo doo doo. And I have it join here. Boo doo. Boo doo. Let's do boo doo boo. Boo doo boo boo. Okay. Yep. Okay. Boo doo doo boo. Boo doo doo doo. Boo doo doo. Yeah, so you'll hear me singing a lot. It certainly is not to sound like a diva. Singing is a very, very helpful tool. It's actually one of the oldest, like, known pedagogical tools for one of the most oldest recommended pedagogical tools. If you go up on Wikipedia or Google, whatever, if you look up this lady called Nadia Boulanger, she was the great, great, great composition teacher of the 20th century. And music composition technique and all that, a lot of it was kind of stuck in the ivory tower and kept within the inner circles and the like. But one of her big techniques was to always have her students sing what they were working on and just sing anything that they were trying to comprehend. It's actually like the absolute best thing that you can possibly do to train your ear. Your ear is your most important thing. You always want to train up your ear because it's the thing that actually gives you insight into how music works. The way that I kind of think about it is, imagine if you were a visual artist and you had when you started, you had very, very blurry vision, and you had to train at making your vision clearer and clearer and clearer so you could see the details and you could see like what's actually going on. Same thing with building up your ear. And two, it's just an invaluable tool to just work on things. So I'm always singing. Composition friends are always singing as well. But sounds a little goofy, but it gets the job done. Boo doo doo doo. Boo. And it has an actual utility. I'm not just trying to torture you guys. Ba 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 ba. Boo doo doo doo. Actually, we have to move that over. Boo boo. Okay, so we can do this. So this should sound pretty good. Hopefully. Let's see. Actually, let me get rid of the metronome. I think it's a little bit overpowering. Okay, that might be, let me hear this. It might be a little bit of a clash. That actually works. It's just that these are taking on so much character now that like generic middle melody, which doesn't have any character to it now, it's kind of getting in the way. It's not coordinating with the other two melodies. So it's starting to cause some like bad conflict. It's not like the worst thing in the world, but we're also going to flesh this out a little bit, as you'll come to see. Let me see. Musically challenged. Yeah, it just takes practice, believe me. A completely free alternative to Reaper for Mac. I'm pretty sure Reaper is on Mac, is it not? Go on, it's reaper.fm/download. It should be, as far as I know, it's available on Mac. I actually started using Reaper because like when I was in high school, I didn't have a laptop and I wanted to work at stuff at school. And Reaper you could actually put on a USB drive and just plug and play. So that's why I got started with it. But it is a really quality DAW, digital audio workstation, music production program. And yeah, someone had said that completely free alternative. Okay. Well, Reaper is like WinRAR free, which means that it has like a never-ending trial, but you have full access to all of its features. That's actually what I use. See how it says Reaper evaluation license? I've been evaluating it for like half a decade now. Still trying to see if I like it. So, but I think it's only like $60 actually. Whereas the really big music production platforms, they're like hundreds of dollars at least. So Reaper's actually, I'm not affiliated with Reaper or anything. It's just it's a cool program. So anyways, we have a pretty solid bottom melody now. There's actually a little bit more going on here than what meets the eye and your initial impressions of the ear. We never care about what meets the eye. We don't care about what music looks like. We only care about what it sounds like. But yeah, there's a little bit more going on here that I'll break down as to why this sounds so rich already, even with two melodies, as we kind of heard. Okay, so now we'll do this third melody. So we'll go, let's do, now, let's see. Okay, we could do like something along those lines. So I think just repeating would be nice. We don't really have a lot of space. Yeah, let's do this. So we'll go. It's gonna sound really robotic at first. You'll see what I mean. It's gonna sound not very nice. Something along those lines. So we could do. So we could go. So here, I'll do this first, just to kind of show you guys like how this is evolving in my head, and to like just point out how the musicality functions as well. So we have that. But this middle melody, it's just a little bit obnoxious right now. I think this isn't going to resolve it, but I think I am. There's a main thing that I'm going to do that's going to solve this, but I think it has to be turned down a little bit anyways. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're actually going to emphasize, we're going to make a melody in a melody. So this melody is just very very one-dimensional, but we're gonna change the volume of it to make a melody within this melody, where it goes. What is it? So you can actually use volume in this circumstance to make a sense of rhythm within it. So we have something like that. It's a little bit harsh with that do, like the piano sound it uses. Not really a big fan of that. So we'll add that at the end. So now we kind of have something a little bit nicer. It's going to sound a little better, even more so when we actually have the electronic side of things. Okay, so that's when we actually want it to, we're going to have it change at the end here. Might get rid of this one, but that is so rough. I don't like that. Just the way that this accentuates it, but that should be, you know what? Actually, I have an idea a little bit kooky. And this actually, like, this isn't, like, this stuff doesn't really matter all too much, like the volume and everything, with what we're doing right now in MuseScore, because we're not going to use MuseScore to get the volume and everything. That's actually going to be in our oscillators. But I do want you guys to hear this. Just so you can see, this is part of the problem solving. And like even before you go into the like the electronic side of things, you still need to like make a good demo of things. So what we're gonna do is that we're gonna have this be repeated, but we're going to add a doubling of the note that we want emphasized. So we can go like, okay, I think I actually got the wrong. That one's a little bit quiet. Well, this actually does work, right? So the piano was kind of played really harshly before, like do 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 do, way too much. We just need it to be a little bit louder. We don't need that change in character. We just need the change in volume. So with this doubling on top, with this doubling on top of this, if I can do this doubling on top of this one here will give us a louder volume on these hits so that we get that sense of rhythm like I was talking about. So that we can do this. Oh, actually, we need both of them copied, of course. So we're not going to have that. We're just going to do that. So this is emphasized. Okay, so we have this nice 4 bars of music here. It should sound pretty decent now. Okay, coming together. Not too shabby for throwing it together. And then I think we can hide the one that we don't want to see. Because again, we only want these oscillators. We only want 3 of the oscillators, 3 of the pitched oscillators here. So, but you can kind of get a sense of what's going on now. I can break this down a little bit more musically, but we're kind of getting an hour now, and I do want to jump into the electronic side of things as well. But basically, as we saw, we started with this basis. And we just ornamented each of these melodies, right? We have this ba ba da ba ba da ba ba da ba da ba. We did that for the bottom line as well, and we did that for the middle line, and that's what got us our full thing of music here. So this is just 4 bars of music. I would say like the absolute smallest amount of, I guess you could go by bars. Like say your Pokemon Town themes, anywhere from like usually around like 16 to 32 bars. This is just 4. So we kind of have a little slice of a full world here, but we don't really have much of a dynamic story or the like. We're not going to different parts of a song or anything. This is just a little encapsulation of a overall musical world. But it works pretty well. It kind of gets our point across. But yeah, if you guys are curious at all about like, how I came up with this, what my problem solving process was, why I did certain things, just let me know. I'm not going to go into it on my own accord right now, just because I want to make sure we can touch the electronic side of things, but be happy if there's any questions on the musicality stuff. But we do have this coming together. So we can kind of get rid of this middle one here, right? Because this is like our 3 oscillators overall. But yeah, in fact, I think I will get rid of this middle one for now, because I'm going to export this as MIDI, which is a music. Oh, there's the drums that we have to do as well. I'm going to export this as MIDI in a second, which is like a musical data type that we can then use to load it up into Reaper, and we can start the electronic stuff. So yeah, perfect. I'm happy it's resonating with people. I'm hoping so. I was hoping so. I think it's a pretty fascinating topic at the end of the day. So we have this in place. No, I guess I won't go into that right now. I'll just get the drums done, and then we'll kind of move this over to the Reaper. Okay, so remember how we had our boots and cats sort of thing from earlier? So we have this. So that is like your. What we're doing, we can represent that sort of sound function with particular drums as well. Because it's not really like the exact instrument that necessarily matters. It's the character of the sound that fulfills that, like, say, that boop function or that k function or t function. We just need a sound that's within that realm of character. So naturally, you'd go for like a kick drum. In fact, that's what that boots and cats. The boot is supposed to represent a kick drum, as you'll often hear in like club music. In fact, this drum pattern is called the 4 on the floor, because you have your kick drum is you hit it with your foot. A drummer would. That's why it's called a kick drum. You have a pedal that they hit. The pedal goes on to smack the drum, hence kick drum. That's why it's called the 4 on the floor, because you're hitting on the floor. It's from like disco. It's a disco term. I think this drum pattern, the kick drum, like originally came from disco or funk music, one or the other. But so we have that. So you can hear that. Ba, 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 ba. But now we want to add the snare drum. Your snare drum is like your cat. So we'll add that. We can have it go throughout. Now, there's lots of different possibilities with drums in terms of different rhythmic patterns, even different drum instruments. I mean, obviously, we're going to stay focused on our drum instruments because the 8-bit music is not going to be able to replicate or be able to form an approximation of every percussion instrument in existence. But we can, but you can do a lot of different stuff with the rhythm and just the nature of how the drum sounds are organized. We'll just stick to this for now. And then we can do the hi-hat as well, which is it's like your boots and cat. So boot is your boot, or let's see. There we go. Just very basic drum pattern. Right, boots and cats and boots and cats. Okay, so we'll paste this throughout. And it gets us going, right? So the drums add just a nice little drive to things, right? Might even be a little bit too energetic for this sort of song, but whatever, works fine. Okay, so in MuseScore, we've created this little song. Just kind of keep an eye on things. Okay, we created this nice little song, but now what we want to do with it ultimately, the whole point of this is to make 8-bit style music. So we have the musical limitations of it in place, right? We've designed this song with the limitations of that sort of 8-bit music in mind. Now we want to realize it with, 8-bit-esque sounds. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go to Export in MuseScore. We're going to export this as MIDI files. So MIDI is, at least from what I've seen, your de facto music data type. In fact, let's go ahead and copy that. Let's do, what do we want to call this? I don't know. Let's call this MLHville. Kind of sounds like a town theme from a video game. MLHville, why not? Okay, so we have that in place. Now we're going to jump into Reaper. And we're going to get started on actually putting sounds to this. So in Reaper, I have different audio channels here. You can see on the left-hand side. Each of these channels is going to correspond to one of our oscillators in the sound hardware, as we'll come to see. So let me go ahead and drop that down. I'd like drop this. No. That's annoying. Let me see. Do export. Yes. MuseScore 3. Actually, I could probably just drop it like this, right? There we go. Oh, look at that. Just generic MuseScore files. Creepy Forest to different sound themes. Oh, I've written so much music, I can't even remember half of it. Okay, so that's what we're starting with. We obviously do not want our music to sound like that. So let's go ahead and see what exactly is going on. I've muted everything except for our top oscillator. Okay, so the reason why that sounded so crazy is because we're using the noise oscillator when it should be. Remember, the noise doesn't have any pitch on it. We want something that's pitch. You want to use one of our pitched oscillators. In fact, I'm going to do this. I'm going to rename these. So this is pulse 1, pulse 2, wave, and noise. So we'll talk a little bit more about these again. I introduced them a little bit at the start, but now it'll make a little more sense. So we have our 3 pitched oscillators. We have pulse 1, pulse 2, and wave. We'll focus on those at first. Pulse 1 is, I'll play it. So it's nice we have like an oscilloscope here, so we can kind of see just what the waveform looks like. I can make changes to the waveform sound. You'll see it reflected in the oscilloscope here. So using the pulse width modulation knob, I can get different timbres. And there's some other controls too that you have. You can control the envelope of the sound, which is basically how the amplitude or how the volume evolves over time. So essentially what that means is that we can have the sound fade in for each note. We can have it fade out for each note. We can have it have a tail. There's quite a few things that we can do. I'll show you. So I'm going to raise the attack. The attack is like the fade in on each note. So you can hear how it's kind of like sucking in. And then if we change the release, it's kind of like the tail of the sound. So if I take the release down, it's not going to, the tail is going to be a lot shorter. So it's going to cut off. Right. Okay. There's some other things that we can do. Like we can do some pitch effects. Probably the most notable one is that we can do vibrato. So we can have it kind of waver in pitch. So you have to be careful when you use it, because now the melody, like the pitch is so unstable that it's just kind of lost its character. But here, the melody is still recognizable with it. So we can change so what I'm messing around with is we can change the intensity of the effect, and we can change like how rapid the vibrato is. So changing the intensity of it, changing the speed of it. So your vibratos usually cap out below 20 hertz. You can see this one only goes up to 15 hertz. This is more of a fun fact. But with human hearing, we start to hear frequency. A frequency below 20 hertz is inaudible to the human ear. So you're only going to hear the effects of this indirectly, like how we heard on the vibrato. But once you get higher and higher, once you get past 20 hertz, we can actually start to hear the effect that this is having on the sound. We start to hear it as its own sound. And so it gets into, what do they call it? Modulation. I think it's like frequency modulation. You start to get some strange new like phenomenon in terms of sound. So I don't know, just interesting stuff. But yeah, so that's why like this caps off at 15. Just there's a bajillion things like that I could point out, but we won't for time's sake. That sounds like dubstep. Okay. Anyways, so you can imagine if we sit down and really wanted to work this out, we could actually do some pretty crazy sound effects. If you want to hear something really insane, go on YouTube and search up the Silver Surfer soundtrack on the NES. It uses just this setup with just these basic oscillators, and it creates some pretty crazy sounds with it. It's from this like some Silver Surfer game from the 80s. But anyways, so we have our pulse width oscillator. We have another pulse width oscillator, which is what we're going to use for this middle melody, this like repeating note one. Oh, actually, we have to load up sound on it. So MIDI itself, and just to clarify as well, so we made a MIDI file for this little song that we made. But MIDI itself actually does not carry any audio information. People get confused by this because you might have opened up a MIDI file on your computer before. You double click it, Windows Media Player will open and it'll play your MIDI file. But that's actually because Windows has its own like sounds engine, whatever you'd call it, to actually interpret the MIDI file. So it has all these like instrument sounds already saved to Windows that boots up the MIDI file and plays with its own sound. But MIDI itself actually has no sound. What I usually compare it to for people is like those player pianos. Have you ever seen a player piano, like a piano that plays itself? It has this like roll of paper that you feed into it. And the paper has all these marks on, it has all these marks on it to tell the piano what notes to press and when, for how long, so on and so forth. So the paper itself can't make sound, right? The paper is just the data. It's just the instructions on what sounds to make. You still need a sound source to interpret the paper, which is where the actual piano comes in. Very similar to how MIDI works. MIDI is just data about musical notes. It doesn't have any capability of actually making sound itself. So what I used on this one to boot up the oscillators is I used this, it's just this plugin I found. It's supposed to replicate like 8-bit sound, what would you call it? Just like the sound situation for 8-bit stuff. But again, it's just a simple, very simple oscillators that it has loaded up. So I have one open on this Pulse 1 melody, but I'm going to have another one open on the Pulse 2 melody because these are separate instances. I think it's called Papu. I don't know why. Kind of fun to say. So we have this other pulse width melody. So you can hear that weird fade in. That's because the attack is up, right? We have a fade in on it. Ooh, I don't like that. Oh wait, okay. I was adjusting the wrong oscillator. So again, it's just that dot 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 dot. There's not that contrast within it for the volume. That's going to make like a melody within the melody. So we have to add that ourselves. We actually have to program that in. But so we have that. So now if we put these two together, it'll sound okay. Right, just one dimensional. But we have that in. Now we're going to add the oscillator for the third one. Looks like we already have it loaded up. We just have to change it to the wave oscillator. The wave table, I believe it's called in full. Yeah, because I don't believe it's actually, I think it actually has a set of samples that it uses. So it's not just like a simple oscillator. But here, let's go through them. Well, you can't really gauge things in and of themselves. You have to listen to them in context. It's kind of like, I don't know, like if you were to gauge a burger just by eating just eating a handful of sesame seeds, that's kind of a silly thing to do, right? There's a whole, does not capture the burger experience as a whole. So you have to actually be pretty careful listening to stuff by itself, especially when you're doing like music production like this. Things are all about how they function in the whole. I think it sounds like they put down an octave though. Let me see. Might be overtones that make it sound. Might change that in a second to put an octave up. Put it in higher pitch. Yeah, I don't like that. Again, it's not going to sound the best right now because I'll explain why in a second, but the very, very first step of music is being able to hit the right notes at the right time. That is just a prerequisite to actually getting started to make something artistic. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, that's actually, yeah, it sounds like an octave down in register. I don't know why. Basically, I just had to put it up higher in pitch for it to actually reflect what's going on in the MuseScore. Okay, that actually sounds decent enough as is. Okay. Okay, so let's get into what exactly we have to do. Let me just check on the chat here. Thank you for hosting. Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy that people are enjoying this. It's a very fun topic, I feel. So, but yeah, I mean, even with this, I mean, we have it translated now to electronic sounds. But something about it just kind of feels wimpy, right? It doesn't really sound as solid as it did in MuseScore. Or two, if you go listen to like finished 8-bit soundtracks or songs or the like, they're just not going to sound as wimpy as this. There's a reason for that. Even though we're hitting the right notes at the right time, that's just the very, very beginning of things. The articulation and the character, and I don't want to say feeling like in a transcendent sense, but just the character that you give to things is super, super important as well. Well, there's actually one like more, I guess you could say, mechanical thing missing from this. Again, it's this middle melody, right? We're missing that we're missing that rhythmic aspect to it. So I'm going to go ahead. I know you can actually do this on the hardware, but I don't see anything. So with the individual oscillators, oh, I have the wrong one open. With the individual oscillators, where is this? There we go. So the individual oscillators, you can actually change the volume on them, like in the actual Game Boy hardware. I don't know if I see it on here. Wait, why would you have? That's kind of crazy. Okay. Anyways, I don't think this is stuff that you'd actually have in the actual Game Boy stuff. But anyways, yeah. So you actually can control the volume on the original like 8-bit hardware, but on this one, it doesn't seem like on this emulation, it doesn't seem like that's the case. So I'm going to open this up and actually go ahead and start changing the volume on these notes so that we can have that rhythmic pattern. And if anyone has any questions or the like in the chat or just any comments, by all means, go ahead and drop them. Love talking about this stuff. Okay, so here I have, oh, it's because this is locked. So here I have this middle melody, and I have the volume represented along this axis, and I'm going to have the volume change over time. So I want the volume louder, like on this note, but I want it softer on these other notes that aren't part of the pattern that I'm trying to emphasize. That's kind of that's what you see me doing right now. So you can hear there's a very obvious difference in volume there, right? It starts high, then it immediately goes low. So we want it to program this to reflect that pattern that melodic pattern that I wanted to impart. So we have that. I'm sure there's probably a slightly better way of doing this, but this should work for now. I'm actually not the biggest into music production. I definitely know enough to put together synth tracks, and I've actually made a few like electronic tracks and like myself, full synthesizers mixed, but it's musicality, like writing the melodies and all that is my main specialization. There we go. Okay. Bop, 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 bop. This is a tiny bit tedious, but we'll get through it. And two, the effect is going to be worth it because again, it really is going to turn this from again, it's actually going to give us the musical effect that we need. So bop, 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 bop. So we have bop, bop, bop. So do, do, do. So we just bring this up again. Yeah, I'm sure there's, again, probably a better way. this seems tedious, scaring you from anything music, I promise you there's probably a better way. This just isn't my exact forte. So we have oops, so we have to actually slide this over one. Bop, 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 bop. So yes, even though people romanticize music with the art and the feelings and the transcendent stuff, you certainly still have your grunt side of things too. Da, 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 da. Okay, so we should be done with this now. We just have to put up this one. Then we should be good. And I think you can just copy and paste this for the next one. Mostly. Right, and so let's give that a shot actually. Can I please tell me that I can copy and paste the envelope? Oh, otherwise I'm going to be sad. Actually, how can I don't know. This is not a Reaper training session, but you can hear now that we take this away. Actually, it might be a little bit too quiet on this. Yeah. Anyways, you kind of get the point. So I found it all incredible. Any online course? Honestly, no. This might be a little bit controversial, but sadly, all the music education content out there is just really not solid at all. The best thing that you can do, which is hard because you kind of need a mentor. I certainly needed it at first. Like I said, I was classically trained and all this stuff, but I would say you should transcribe songs, which is where you take music that you like and you learn how to recreate it in a music notation software and something like Reaper. Exactly. Like you listen for a melody and like say you have like a full song, even like these Game Boy songs, like say you have the top melody, the mid melody, the bass line like we have here, right? We have pulse 1, pulse 2, wave, and the noise channel. You listen for what this top melody is playing exactly, and you reverse engineer that onto like something like MuseScore within Reaper. Then you do, say, the wave channel. You listen for what it's doing exactly, mid, exactly. You get those all down, which is kind of a skill, you know. It takes a lot of practice to do that. But if you do that for 10, 20, 50 songs, you just get the sense of what good songwriting is. That's how we learn everything. And that's how, think about learning how to cook. Imagine you don't have any cooking experience. No one showed you how to do anything before. You never watched people in the kitchen cook. You just have no real experience. What are you going to do? What is the first thing that people do? They get a recipe book, or they take classes where they learn how to make recipes. Why? Because recipes are successful, high quality compositions. By following recipe after recipe after recipe and like learning a bit of the fundamentals along the way, that's how you come to learn how to cook. As opposed to the opposite way, going, I want to be an original chef. I want to, this is just such an obvious analogy with some of the stuff I hear in music. I want to be an original chef. I want to be completely original. I don't want to copy everyone. So you just walk to the kitchen, you have no idea what you're doing. You're going to burn your butter. You're going to make rubbery eggs that are rubbery on the sides and that are, I don't know. You're just going to make a lot of nasty stuff. You're not really going to learn anything. That's like the oldest story in the arts, sadly. Like a lot of people, they don't understand that you have to learn how to make good things before you make original things. And how do you learn how to make good things? Well, you reverse engineer from the things that already exist that are good. It's like those stories of the master painters and how they learned. they would copy paintings, like one brushstroke at a time, and think about like why this painter did this particular stroke. Why do they do this particular stroke? Why do they do that particular stroke? So on and so forth. That was actually the way that I learned music, is that I transcribed a bunch of songs. And I did have my classical training and everything, but honestly, I'd say that transcription was the thing that absolutely helped the most. So there are a couple good resources, though. Like if you just want to fool around with things a little bit, they're certainly not perfect whatsoever, sadly. There's nothing that I found that I really liked, unfortunately. But there is this guy, I think his name is Joe Hanley. Let me see something actually. So if you look up, so this guy is this cool, I think it's an Audible Genius. Okay, Audible Genius makes a lot more sense. So if you want to learn how synthesizers work, which is like the usage of oscillators and the like, you can actually go on to hear you can make some pretty crazy stuff. Like all the pop music and the like that you hear on the radio now, all the instruments are basically all synthesizers. The drums are made from electronic waveforms. The chords are, the bass line is, the lead melodies. The only thing that isn't synthesized is like the lead vocals. And even those can be synthesized if you use Vocaloid and the like. So synthesizers are very, very heavy in music nowadays. And you also use synthesizers like in more, like say you record a bass guitar, but you want a little bit more bottom or oomph to it. You can like subtly copy it with a synthesizer with some frequencies that are like really, really low to give it more bounce. You can do that to drums too. Synthesizers are everywhere in music production. So I first heard of him from the Centorial, and it's the one thing that I've actually liked out of all music educational, like just anything out there. It's the only thing I've really liked. But I mean, it's kind of focused. It's how to learn how to use synthesizers as an instrument. But what they also have is something called, I think it's building blocks, which actually teaches the basics of like making beats or making instrumentals. Now it's not going to be as melodically rich as like the stuff that you're hearing here, but it will kind of get you on the way to seeing how you like music. You could try this out. Again, there's quite a bit about it that I don't really like, unfortunately, but I think this is definitely the best thing that I found for learning about like the larger world of actually making music. Yeah, the dude's kind of cool who put together Audible Genius. He did music and he wanted a better way to learn how synthesizers worked. So he taught himself to code and he made that Centorial software. And then this building blocks was the next big thing that they came out with. But anywho, but yeah, I mean, good question. Because yeah, it's not really obvious like where to start with any of this stuff. But ideally, transcription of good songs. But that is kind of a technical skill in and of itself. So anyways. Okay, we had the volumes here. Ideally, I'd kind of move these up, but I don't think I can select. Oh, can I select them all, actually? Let's see. If I can. Ooh, okay, that's cool. So I might be able to fix this. Again, kind of tedious, but it should work. Okay, so we can move all these up. Ooh, why is that? I don't like that. Well, that kind of messed it up. Whatever, we'll just keep that for now. So we have the pulse wave. Then we have the wavetable oscillator. Not too much that we could. I mean, we could. I don't know. Like the stuff that I would go on to do would be to add like different articulations and like usually at the end of held notes. This is something that is. I mean, a lot of these problems that I'm talking about that I would resolve, these are just these are just super, super old music problems. Like if you have a held note, if I go like, ba da da, you just keep holding it. It gets a little bit static, especially when the sound is absolutely perfect, like with an oscillator. You'll hear it here. I'll kind of skip to the end of this. In fact, I'll play it in context of the full song. Listen for these held notes. They're just a little bit like one-dimensional or static, a little bit boring. Right, just a little bit boring. So usually what you do is that you add a vibrato at the end of it. Not like boring in a like a, oh, it's so boring, but in that like it kind of kills the musical interest. It sounds like a weakness. What you do is that you add vibrato, which is like a shifting in the pitch. Ba-da-ba. I don't know if my voice is the best for it. Let's go to the synthesizer. Oh wait, okay, this is pulse 2. Boo doo 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 doo. Then we'll add a little. Okay, rate is too slow. Amount is too much. So we'll add a little bit at the end of like every long note. Like that. In fact, let me see if I can automate this. So this stuff is just as important actually getting the pitch and the melody and the like. Because if you don't have this, then you just have like the pitch and the notes at the right time, but you don't have any like character or soul to things. Again, you'll have a lot of people that are like learning how to play an instrument, like, oh, I can play this song on the piano. But they can hit all the right notes at the right times, but the volume is all messed up. The like some notes are just hit arbitrarily hard, some are hit arbitrarily soft. It's just something that you don't want to listen to, even though the notes are hitting at the right time and with the right pitch. The really great instrumentalists, the really great recordings and performances of things, the reason why they're great is because of this like extra layer, this extra level of like artistic sculpting with these different dimensions like volume and articulation and vibrato and all this sort of stuff. That's really where music comes to life. So, yeah. You can kind of keep the vibrato on there. It's not really my personal taste, but some people might like it. Another big thing is actually, again, this is like concepts that are really important, but something called gain staging, which is like the relative volume to all of the different melodies. So again, you can have the right pitch and the right rhythm, but if your volume is all crazy out of whack between your different instruments or between your different melodies, it's just not going to sound that good. Right? It's like this is just right. The proper emphasis isn't being made. Like this pop 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 pop. That melody is not supposed to be the focus. Your lead melody is supposed to be the focus. So you want your lead melody to be louder than everything. Your lead melody being this pulse 1 melody, right? The actual tuneful one. The bass line, this wavetable could be a little bit louder. So yeah, it's coming together. But yeah, like people are saying, right, it's actually now with proper setting of volume, it actually sounds a lot better. See, this is a thing that a lot of people don't realize too, just in music production overall. A lot of stuff rests on getting the volume between instruments correct. If you don't have that properly done right at the outset, then everything you do is just not going to matter because there's such a fundamental issue. The setting of volume is super, super, super important. This came to life a lot more just because I have like a decent setting of volume now. And then, okay, so I have the noise here. This is set to a pitched oscillator right now. So that's why you hear all these different like, sounds kind of kooky. But remember, we don't want a pitched oscillator. We want the noise. Noise is not pitched. And there's going to be an issue with this too, is that it's just going to have the same sound, but like hitting for all these. But we want a dynamism in the sound. Right, it just kind of sounds like shuffling, like waves. So basically what I have to do is So I have to come in here into the MIDI. These notes are overlapping. We can't have them overlap. Each of these rows here are supposed to correspond to different sounds. In fact, I put 2 drum hits on top of each other right here, but you can't do that because, again, you only have one oscillator, one sound source, and it can only make one particular sound at a time. So that was oversight by me. I wasn't thinking. So it should really be like this. So you can see in the MIDI data, right? We see that reflected. But it's all set to just one singular sound source right now. So I have to come in and program it to say when you hit this note, make the boot sound. When you hit this type of note, you go to the sound. When you hit this type of note, you go sound. For time's sake, I think I'm just going to recycle this, which is that same pattern. If I can, it might be probably a little bit too fast. What tempo is this? No, it's 120. I think this is at 120 also. Okay, no, that's too fast. I meant I could probably slow it down to 120. So let's do like 093. So slowing down audio like this, a little bit of physics involved behind the scenes. I slowed it down without changing. So I slowed it down without changing the pitch. This is just more of a fun fact. But normally, see, I have this preserved pitch when changing rate. Now, normally when you change the speed of something, like I'm trying to do here, I'm trying to slow this down because I want it to. It's a little bit too fast of a tempo for what the melodies are playing. Because I made this drum audio at a different tempo than the melodies here. Now, when you slow something down, the pitch naturally changes. You ever played with a record player before? And like you put your finger down on the record, what happens? Not only does it slow down, but the pitch actually gets lowered. So everything sounds like Darth Vader. Or like, what do they call that? Like vaporwave. Everything sounds like vaporwave. Whereas if you speed the record up, if you spin it faster, not only does the tempo go up, but the pitch also increases. So things sound more like Alvin and the Chipmunks. So there's actually a direct relationship between speed and pitch. So I slowed this down a little bit so you can hear it's actually going to be a little bit more lower in pitch. It's not really noticeable. If I go really low though, like if I go, it might be a little bit too low actually. A little bit too slow. Right, it's lower. Not as easy to hear because it's an unpitched. Again, noise is kind of unpitched, but the overall frequency spectrum kind of shifts downward. Whereas if I make it a lot faster, you can hear it's going to go faster, but it's also going to be higher in pitch. Again, not as pronounced with the noise in terms of the pitch change, just like on a surface level listen. But that's how sound works in the real world. Now with digital stuff, we can slow something down while preserving the pitch, but it comes at a cost of the audio can kind of have like glitches in it or sound kind of grainy, so the audio quality gets damaged. But it doesn't really matter considering we're dealing with like 8-bit sound sources anyways right now, just for these purposes. So anyways, just kind of a fun fact. Again, a little bit of signal processing stuff just to know about. There we go. Okay, this is coming together. Oh, wait, what's going on here? Oh, because I have this noise still, right? I'm not using that. We're going to use this audio that I made up. Okay, so now we have drums in, so we can take a listen. Drums are kind of getting out of rhythm, but you can hear, right? It's coming together. It's actually a nice little song. We could continue this and make like a full-fledged song. Actually, I probably should have shifted it in the other direction. But there we go. We have 8-bit music. Ta-da, ta-da. Which direction do I want to shift you? I want you to be on the downbeats. Okay, so I want to shift you more left or the other way. Okay, a little bit more. Again, this is not the best way to do this in terms of you can kind of sit down and calculate this stuff even, but quick fix, it's fine. There we go. Yeah, sounds like a nice little Pokemon town, like someone said. Perfect. Okay. Any questions on anything so far? Is there anything that you guys want to delve more into? Because that's a pretty decent primer already. Kind of what goes into this stuff. We saw how some of the musical limitations, right? You only have 3 pitched sources of sound, and like a noise channel that we can use to emulate drums. We saw how like you take advantage of that compositionally, where you have very tuneful melodies in each channel, but you're still abiding by things like harmony and phrasing, all that sort of stuff. And so we have the musicality part out of the way. Then we brought that stuff into Reaper, and we saw how we can use the different oscillators, the electronic sounds to shape things, and just the very visceral aspects of the each musical entity itself. Like the volumes we set properly, and things kind of came to life a little bit more. We heard that we can use like the envelopes, the attack, and the release, the vibrato to give a little bit more life to things as well. So if there's any questions or anything of the sort, or if you guys want me to talk on any more aspect of things, just let me know. Like if you want to delve into how the music itself works, if you want to delve into like the electronics behind things, or like different effects, like Game Boy specific effects or 8-bit music specific effects that people came up with to give certain musical effects or sound effects or what have you. Toby Fox. Yeah, I know he did. That's the Undertale guy. I think he actually went on to compose music for the Pokemon games themselves, last I heard. So, but yeah, we can delve into a few other things. I think what's pretty interesting too is how certain sound effects are made. Like a really classic one is how they do delays. So if you know, delay is like the technical music term for an echo. It's just an echo, but in music we say delay. A delay is just like a sound repeated one after the other. So the thing though is that there's no echo effect on a Game Boy. There's no delay effect that you can utilize, but they're kind of a nice effect, especially when you have long, spacious melodies. So in fact, let me edit this melody a little bit. Ba, ba, ba. I'm going to make this a little bit less tuneful because that you're going to see why. It kind of helps with the delay effect. Because you need some space for the delays to kind of ring out in time. So let's hear. Okay, so let's say I have this. And I want to keep it short. Ba, 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 ba. Ba, ba. In fact, let's can I just homogenize? Go ahead and send me a message on Discord. Shelby, if you want to learn a little bit more if you want to talk about the music stuff a little bit more. I'm in the MLH Discord. You can search up my name. Okay, I just want these to be like equal and okay, so remember there's no echo effect, right? You can't go into a canyon and have an echo happen on a Game Boy. There's no effect for that. But they're kind of useful as a musical effect. So what do people do? So if you think about it, if you have an echo, it's just the same sound, but with like reduced volume each time. That's exactly how echoes are achieved on the Game Boy. So instead of having just a single source sound, and then you have the reverberation of it, or the echo of it, instead they have literal like they have literal unique instances of that sound each time, just cut down in volume. Well, actually, I can't do that. I have to go ahead and do this. I'm gonna have to edit it manually again, unfortunately. A little bit annoying. But if you want, we can go kind of crazy too in terms of the stuff that you can do with the Game Boy, like sound setup. We can make a song that's a little bit flashier. Like that, right? Ba, 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 ba. So let's see. Ba, 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 ba. There's also some good resources if you want to learn about the physics of sound and how that's used for these electronic oscillators. I know some pretty good articles on that stuff. If you're interested in like the physics side of things, or like the electrical side of things, like the circuits and everything involved with this sort of stuff. Ba, 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 and we can just do that same effect. So we see how the echo is taking place already, right? It's just kind of a smart solution. You sit and think about it for a second, like, okay, how do I get an echo? Well, just take the same sound, repeat it at lowering volumes. Ba, 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 and go on and do it like that. I wonder how that would sound with this. Kind of works. Kind of works. Okay, so we have that in place. I think what I want to cover now is some of the like really crazy things that I found with composition on Game Boy stuff. Again, just using this basic setup of 3 melodies and a drum kit if you need it to accomplish some pretty sweet things. So I think I will get rid of this stuff. Okay, so let's go on here. What could we do? Let me see. I'm gonna write another little song. We'll kind of just see how this process goes again. And we'll apply some different things. I'll show you guys some of what these Game Boy composers came up with that's kind of clever. So let's do like, here, I'm gonna do chords. So this is just here, we'll do this. Let's do kind of do something. We did the 4 on the floor. We're talking about disco music. Maybe we'll do something a little bit more dancing. Nah, I don't want to do that. Let me think. Ba, boom, 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 boom. So we'll do. Wait, no, I'm in the key of B, so I need a. There we go. Oh, my key signature isn't right. That's why. Just music stuff. So then we could go. Here we go. We can loop it again. Okay, so we have that in place. Just a nice little chord progression. We loop it again. So we'll do ba, boom, 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 boom. Okay, disco. Lead melody is important, but you also need or like dance, whatever you want to do. You need a nice bass line to it. Boom, 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 boom. That works. Boom, 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 and boom. We do that. Boom, boom, boom. Boom. I'm making this bass line pretty sparse, and I'll show you why. This is actually very, very intentional. Kind of looks ugly right now with the note links, but it's whatever. Sheet music isn't supposed to look nice necessarily. It just has to capture how this stuff sounds. But could be a little bit nicer, but whatever. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, 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 boom. So we have and then we can repeat that. Boom, boom. We'll get to that in a second. Ba, 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 da, ba, ba, ba. Something like that. Seems kind of arbitrary. I have some stuff in my head that I want to do with it. Ba 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 da da ba ba. Something along those lines. Ba ba da da ba 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 da da ba 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 da da ba ba. So we do that. 1, 2, 3, ba. 1, 2, 3, da 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 da. So again, we have this. Again, we have this structure here, right? We have this boom, 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 boom. But instead of this, and in the bass here, we have boom, 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 boom. But we ornament a little bit. Boom, 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 boom. I want to do the same thing with this melody here. Ba, ba, da, da, ba, ba. Da, da, da. Ba, da, da, ba, da, da. Ba, da, da. Ba, ba, da, 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 da. So we have. So remember how I was saying that it's not just having the right notes play at the right point in time. You need other things like the articulation and the right volume and everything like that. So the notes are in the right point in time that I want, but I don't like how they're being held out at certain points. It just kind of sounds a little bit sloppy. Not sloppy, but it's not horrible, but it could be a lot better if I use a little bit more purposeful, like shorter note lengths. So I could ba ba da 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 da. Instead of doing that, I could have ba ba da da ba ba. Just makes it a little bit more jumpier. Ba da da da. Makes it sound sharper, a lot more. That's what I'm looking for. A lot more. I don't know. Just sounds nicer. Ba da da da. Ba da da ba ba. Ba da 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 da. Ba da da. Ba ba. So we have this. Ba da da. Oop, I wanted this. That works. I want that to be not. Ba da 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 da. Ba da da ba ba. That's good. Okay, so ba da 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 da. Ba da ba 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 da ba da 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 da. Something like that. Ba da ba 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 da. Yeah, thank you. Yep, lots of melodies, thousands and thousands of hours of writing melodies. Ba 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 da ba 1 ba ba da. So let's do kind of the melody dude and my circle of composer friends. Ba 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 da. I always just had a love for them. ba ba da, ba 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 da. So we have ba da da ba 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 da ba ba da ba da da ba da. We do that. Ba ba da ba ba da ba ba da ba ba da. So yeah, I mean, music's a nice hobby, man. It's fun to get into. Ba 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 da. I got into it originally because I heard this crazy song. It's called "Superheroes" by Daft Punk. And there's this part where it's like this crazy wall of sound of all these just insane synthesizers and melodies and everything, and it just completely blew me away. I never heard anything like it before, and I was just curious, like where music comes from. I understand where like painting comes from, you know, your visual sight. I understand where poetry and literature come from, language. I had no idea where music came from, and how something where I don't know where it came from, how it could create such a vivid world. Ba-ba-da. Ba-ba-da. So we do. Ba-ba-da, ba-ba-da. Ba-da-da-da, ba-ba. Ba-ba-da, ba-da. Ba-da-da-da, ba-da, ba-da. Let's give this a shot. Ba-da-da-da, ba-da. There we go. Okay, so now it worked fine before. Remember, we had this version of the melody. Actually works okay. You could actually you can totally roll with this if you wanted to. Let me do. You can totally roll with this if you wanted to. But I think if you add a little bit more character to it at the end, it brings it to another level. Ba-da-da-da-da. Yeah, I guess that works. Probably a little bit better. Call this a 5 sus. Don't really matter. I think I'm going to drop the chords at this point. They're just kind of getting in the way. Remember in our original piece, right, that middle melody was getting in the way towards the end. Now both these have enough character. They don't really need the supporting chords to paint what they're trying to do. Okay, so we have that. So we have this. Okay, now here's the thing. Remember how we had that mid melody before? We're going to add a middle melody here too. Something like that. Jeez. Something like that. Just very syncopated, as in like it's kind of hard to get a handle on the rhythm at first for me. Right after beat 2. We can do that. Something like that. We'll kind of roll with that. So we have this middle melody now. This mid melody could be a little, we'll make some changes to it in a second. But what I want to show you is how you get really rich sounding effects. So we have this, we call this the bass line, your lowest melody. We have this bass line playing. But we have this dead space within the melody here, right? We have these things of dead space. So what we can do is that we can use a single oscillator to play multiple melodies. Boom, 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 boom. So what we can do is we can kind of copy, we can fill this guy out. Boom, 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 bottom, bottom. Like this, you'll see what I mean. We're going to reinforce this middle melody with a harmonization, or just with like a second melody to kind of fill it out a little bit more. In fact, we'll do this. Or we're really cutting it close on some of these, right? Like this barely plays. It's super, super brief. I don't know if I like the sound of that though. This is the thing, you kind of have to play around with this because you're so limited in what you can do because you only have 3 sound sources. So we'll copy this. I have to change these notes in the bass line. You can see these are different entities that you hear. In fact, we can even isolate this. We can isolate this one here. And you can hear there's this bump, bum, bum, bum as one thing. Then we have this da, 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 da as a separate thing. This gets pianists a lot that I've noticed, like on their left hand, they'll be playing like arpeggios in their left hand, which are like notes going up and down a lot of the time. And they think it's like all just one thing, but actually it's multiple melodies that are being played. That's why it can sound so rich. So I would have to sit down with this and kind of work out the intricacies of the texture. But here you can see that we have different, you could even do it up here too, possibly. Let me see how that sounds. Okay, anyways, so that goes on. So it keeps going. Let me just keep track in chat here in the like. But there's some things that you can do to like really get your texture sounding nice. So if I do like boom, boom. So ba 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 ba. I'm gonna try and do something cool. Let's see. Ba 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 ba. Oops. Ba 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 da 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 ba da da ba. I'll put some chords out for you guys so you can kind of hear what's going on here. A simplified version. Ba da da. Needs to change here. Ba da ba da 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 da. That works out fine. Boom. We can have the bass kind of take over that. Boom, 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 boom. Oops. Okay, so pretty basic setup. In fact, it kind of sounds like not that decent right now, but you'll kind of see what's in store. Wait. Boop, 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 boop. Actually, let's do this instead. So we'll do doop, 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 doop. doop, 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 doop. Okay, this is gonna be fun. Ba 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 ba. So we have this. So let's do boo, boo doo doo boo. Boo doo 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 doo. Okay, so we're gonna resolve this issue in a second because we have an issue where we're using like two oscillators at once on the same thing. Remember that you can't have two notes playing at once on these just because of the Game Boy hardware. But boo doo 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 doo. Let's see how this. Boo doo 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 doo. Boo doo 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 doo, something like that. It's kind of coming together. I'm gonna try and load this up in the Game Boy stuff too, while we still have time. Okay, so this is coming together. Actually, we should probably do that, yeah. Anyways, getting into more technical composition stuff. So then, what else could we do? Probably have to put that down a little bit. I don't know. It'll get a bit too technical now. But basically, you can go on to like imply a bunch of different melodies. Where like all along here and up here, I can again, I have this bass here. Boom, 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 boom. Oops. Boom, 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 boom. So we can do that with this. That's coming together. Then remember that I have this dead space in the bass here. I have like this held note, but it just needs to hit right there. So I can take this up here and put this melody here. Right, it's kind of a pretty far distance from the first note that this oscillator plays, but it gets there, you know. So this is what they did all the time in Game Boy Music when you wanted something a little bit more complex. Okay, this is actually, oh wait, you don't need that. See, it's being held over. So we can do that. So we can get rid of this. Ba, 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 ba. Ba, 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 ba. Ba, 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 ba. Ba. So kind of see how things will switch around. If you go into like the Pokemon Red files or Pokemon Blue files, you see this happening all the time. You'll have like multiple melodies within a single oscillator. It's kind of a technical thing, so I couldn't like throw together something super snazzy for you guys right off the bat. ba, 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 ba. But you kind of get the idea. So then you would load this up into your MIDI here, and you start changing the sounds around to accomplish like certain things, or to really bring out these different melodies and the like. So, anywho, we could boot this up really quickly. We have a couple minutes left. I'll get rid of this stuff. It's getting a little bit too technical for right now, but we can export this. So snazzy, let's call it snazzy song. Why not? Take our snazzy song and boot up its MIDI. Oops, let's go here. Expand that. So now we should have okay, so we have to put this up. This actually came out pretty well just dropping it in. Wow. We go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. For an octave, we have to put this bass line up once, like if you remember from before. Okay, I don't know what's going on there. That's a little bit. Oh, I think it's that from the first song, it's still there, the MIDI data. That's why. Okay. So it's kind of interacting with that. Okay, and then the volume is all messed up there because we were doing this stuff before. So I'll just make a new track. Move this onto here. Actually load up that synthesizer. We'll drop it on. So we had that volume automation. I had that change in volume before that I put in for that emphasized melody. Bop, 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 bop. But now we don't want that because this doesn't have the right character for it. Are you serious? Is that still taking place? That's really annoying. Okay, let's just do this instead. New track entirely. That's following this MIDI? Are you serious? Okay, never mind. I'm going to drop the MIDI on here again, actually. Get rid of that. Boop, boop, boop. Racing against the clock here. Put you up an octave. Yeah, I like how this one came out, actually. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Could use my ear, but oh well. Ooh, so see how that's what happens. There we go. Here's the right one. I only went up 11. So it's coming together. Probably could balance the volume a little bit more better. Yeah, that one melody drops out because we didn't continue it, but it's coming together. Can I ask a question about this? Technical knowledge to know how to word it. Yeah, I know that's a real thing. You know, I remember reading an interview. I think it was like Diana Ross was getting something recorded, and she was working with her audio engineer, and she wanted something changed about the recording. And she said, what'd she say? She's like, "Can you make my voice more purple?" The guy's like, "What does that mean, more purple?" She does not have the studio know-how. She knows how to sing, but she doesn't know the lingo for the audio engineering. So I totally get it. Yeah, I'm glad people have enjoyed it. This is a lot of fun, honestly. I kind of debated on what I wanted to do for this. I want to do something game themed. So I thought maybe I'll do like a text adventure, like very basic programming intro. Maybe I'll like figure out how to make a little game on Arduino that people can play. And I thought, well, you know what? I think something that'd be pretty different is if we did something on game music. And two, like it's something that I know a fair amount about already. So happy it worked out. I'm happy people liked it. Okay, so anyways, that's basically that. Again, we saw that game music really comes down to, if you want to do it like the old school days, 3 melodies, 1 channel for sound effects and drums, generally. And you make your melodies tuneful. You still have to abide by all sorts of musical stuff. I didn't really go into detail on it, but you kind of saw how like harmony still has to factor in. We started out with chords that we ornamented. Different melodies have different characters. Again, it's a little bit technical for today, but all that comes together. And yeah, you have to write your music with the hardware and everything in mind. So we did exactly that. Then we put sounds to it. Now, we didn't go into the articulation and the volume and everything in a lot of detail because, again, just a little bit technical. But I think this should give you a little bit better of an idea of like just how this sort of music comes together, what's all involved, just the different entities and aspects at play. So I'm pretty happy with it. I'm glad we did this. So with that, we're at the end of the stream here. I'm going to bring things down low. If there's any final questions or the like, by all means, please let me know. But if that's not the case, then we'll bring things to a close. Okay, don't see anything coming in. So thank you guys so much for chatting with us and watching today, taking part in the fun. Definitely tune in for tomorrow for our next day in the Games Week for Global Hack Week. Happy to hear. Awesome. Okay, with that, everyone, have a great night, and we hope to see you tomorrow.